Okay. Are you seeing it? Okay. Well, I think there's a lot to talk about this topic. We could talk maybe more than the time we have today. But to make good use of this time, I want to make a brief presentation, a brief reference to the relationship between equality, equity, sustainable development, and how these are linked to asset management. First, let me remind you of the origin of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, going back to the year 2000. In one of the many UN meetings, they unanimously agreed to adopt the Millennium Development Goals, MDGs, to reduce extreme poverty. After that, at the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil in 2012, member states adopted the outcome document, The Future We Want, in which they decided to launch a process to develop a set of SDGs to build up the MDGs. The process culminated in the subsequent adoption of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, with 17 SDGs, as you see in this picture. Well, it's not so clear, but later it's clear. The agenda begins with this phrase: this agenda is a plan of action for people, planet, and prosperity. If you have prosperity, you reduce the inequity and the inequality. Then I think that by working in 17 SDGs, we are working in achieving equality and equity. Every SDG has specific targets defined, which in total are up to 169 targets, a lot of, evaluated with 237 indicators. For those of you have the you have not had the opportunity to see this information, you can find the description of the goals, targets, and indicators in these links. These links, you can find this information. We can see here goals regarding water, people, industry, energy, cities, climate, life on Earth, and peace. All of these subjects are crucial in obtaining equality and equity from the perspective of asset management. As you can see, we have a lot of indicators to measure if we are achieving these goals. Some of you may be asking what relationship do these 17 SDGs, equity and equality, have with asset management? Well, in 2018, the TC 251 published the document Achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals, promoted by Dobin Niggins, it's a credit, which says good asset management, especially good asset management, not some asset management, good asset management is a key enabler for organizations seeking to contribute to the achievement of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. It shows the interaction between asset management principles and 7 of the SDGs. These 7 SDGs are clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry innovation and infrastructure, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, and climate action. Okay, the document mentions globally and not in depth the relationship between asset management and the SDGs. Recently, we needed to go deeper to find specific details, and we found some interesting things in terms of the targets indicators. we notice that we have a few indicators that could or should be applied to measure the company's achievement related to sustainability. In this slide and in the next one, we show some indicators that allow asset-intensive companies such as utilities, wastewater companies, and public transportation to determine if they are achieving their sustainable development goals. For example, you can see in the 611 proportion of population using safely managed drinking water services, and the other proportion of wastewater safely treated, or proportion of population with access to electricity. In the next one, we have passenger and freight volumes by mode of transport, proportion of urban solid waste regularly collected and with adequate final discharge out of total urban solid waste generated by city, and number of companies publishing sustainability reports. That's a good, indicator. Well, for us, this really contributes to measuring the sustainability and in turn the equity. However, checking other goals and their indicators, I found that goals number 2, zero hunger, number 3, good health and well-being, number 15, life on land, and number 16, peace, justice, and strong institution could be benefited from the asset management too. We have, for example, coverage of essential health services, or proportion of the population satisfied with their last experience of public services. Well, finally, I would like to end with by saying this. I'm sure that the asset management is a great contributor for equity and equality, or for reduce the inequity and inequality by adding and achieving sustainable development goals. And we can measure its contribution by using this information about targets and indicators included in the SDGs. We have many indicators, as you see, more than 200 indicators, and I think that could be more, but these are a good guide to identify indicators for our company or for the companies, and how we can contribute for reduce the inequity and inequality. Okay, that's that was I want to share with you with this presentation.
Dan, go ahead.
Before you put away your presentation, can you put back the slide that had the all of the 17 SDGs, the larger one?
Yes.
Because I appreciate you bringing the global perspective to this question, because this really is not just an American issue. It is a global issue of inequity and inequality that happens because of the failure to look beyond the loud voices, the squeaky wheel, or the people that are in the high places who have the ability to have advocates. So when you're looking at this, and you've got the highlighting of—
Sorry, Cecilia, are you looking my picture?
Sí.
Oh, okay.
Sí, lo estoy mirando. Okay, so when we're looking at Daniel's picture here that has the affordable and clean energy is number 7, 8, decent work and economic growth, 9, industry, innovation and infrastructure, sustainable cities and communities, climate action. All of those are big buckets that are categories, but then the individuals and where the inequities happen are in the other ones, the no poverty, number 1, 2, zero hunger, 3, good health and well-being. Boy, do we need that right now in COVID, where the disparities become very clear. Quality education, number 4, 5, gender equality. Then life below water, life on land, peace, justice, and strong institutions and partnerships for the goals. When you look at all of those, there is an aspect of where Hugh talks about the issue of needing to have it be structural, where if we ask that question of who's not at the table, who is this being done for, at the beginning of anything that we're doing to manage the assets, one of the things that ISO 55001 does is help you think about the fact that, or 55,000 defines asset as something of value to the organization, either prospective or current value. We, the people, are of value to the world. And so the thought comes to me that one of the things we need to do is not reinvent wheels, but use and marry the systems that are out there. So I appreciate you sharing the SDGs, because that's something that's out there that's been done. And it's something that we here in America could take and use and marry with the whole issue of dealing with racial inequities and other poverty inequities, gender inequalities and the like, and layer these kind of concepts together to make sure we're asking and being mindful. The first issue, I think, is starting with being mindful of the issues and who will be affected and what are we doing. Because you can have, like, I love how you said, Hugh, that you can have affordable water, but do you have the quality water? Do you have the level of quality? And so that customer bill of rights, or the human bill of rights concept of which humans are we going to be impacting? Instead of being bipartisan, we should be humanitarian and look at those issues. So thank you for raising that.
So great stuff, Daniel. I think this is a good global frame to really look at this thing at. I think one thing that we would want to highlight, and I think it goes back to the example that Mark was bringing up with the executive he was speaking to about why make an investment in customer service. I think we also need to look on the same frame for this. Equity in service delivery, equity in infrastructure investment is a wise investment, because it actually costs more to inefficiently fix the results of the inequitable outcome, right? It costs more money to retroactively go and solve the Flint issue versus making the wiser, more equitable investment up front. And I think that's if we take it outside of just the social frame, from an economic frame, it makes the most sense, right? Not only are you able to have a more robust, reliable system, right? You're able then to spur the economic growth that then allows for reinvestment, so that cost recovery and profitability, if that's the outcome, can then be the realized goal. So I think establishing the real understanding that we're not necessarily talking about here what is completely a social problem to solve. What we're really talking about here is a socioeconomic nexus that really gives us what is a sustainable, reliable solution going forward. And I think that's where, Danny, your presentation really pulls it out to a larger frame to understand that on a global scale, this is something that is, why it may be micro in many of our communities, it is really macro on a global scale. And the results are pretty similar in its outcome. And the fact is, it is inefficient. So finding a better way to do it structurally, I think, is the best outcome from anything. So, equality always works to the best advantage of any system, because in that sense, what you have is a system that not only can propel growth, but can extract value from as many input points as possible.